This is Cult Confessions with Christy and Josie. Welcome to our podcast.
Trigger warning. May contain themes of religious trauma and sexual abuse. Disclaimer. All information in this podcast is our opinion based on our experiences. We do not purport any of this content to be inherently factual and believe that each individual has the right to draw their own conclusion.
Hi, I'm Christy.
And I'm Josie. And today on Cult Confessions, we are back with one of our favorite unhinged preachers, Steven Anderson. We've done a couple of videos about Steven Anderson, his very questionable parenting choices, and some of his very ridiculous opinions that he feels
views.
confident enough to speak in public from a
Right.
pulpit. So today's video is going to be centered around the concept of life, abortion, IVF, fertility, those kinds of things. As you'll see here in a bit, we're just going to watch this little clip. It's about 8 minutes long, 7-8 minutes long, that Steven Anderson put out about his opinions on IVF, which are ridiculous. But we're going to kind of dig into that argument a little bit. And I also, for me as a Christian, I like it when I can back things up biblically. So I also want to talk about abortion and some of the, I think, concepts that were just kind of drilled into our heads as kids that we never really questioned. But now we're adults and we can think for ourselves and we can research for ourselves. So I've been doing some research outside of this and just really been able to support my view on abortion biblically. So we're going to talk about that a little bit as well. But yeah, anything else you want to add before we jump into the video?
Yeah, I'd like to say that we basically just kind of wanted to see if there were any updates since he was in the nut house.
As he calls it, by the way. That's not a slur. He said it.
So I was looking, obviously, to see if he had any updates, and we came across this video. It is in basically being used to attack the uncle that is taking care of his daughter at the at this time.
Which is his brother, right?
Yeah, I couldn't remember. That's why I kind of just said uncle. I believe it's his brother. Yeah. So sorry, he's staring at me on this monitor, which is a lot. Keep looking, and he's
Do his eyes follow you?
There. But yeah, so it's very interesting. He's very much using it specifically to accuse his brother of murder, which is insanity. You will see. It's quite unhinged, and
I haven't watched the whole thing all the way through. I think that we were we were gaming and you're just like, oh my God, look at this. And we started watching. I couldn't finish it. So some of this I've seen and some of this I haven't. So yeah, this will be good.
Yeah. So hopefully you enjoy this unhinged behavior.
Hey everybody, Pastor Steven Anderson here from Faith Forward Baptist Church in Tempe, Arizona. So my brother Clint Anderson, who over the course of several months earlier this year was very instrumental in turning our 17-year-old daughter against us. He ultimately stole her from us. He refused to send her home from a vacation. He was blackmailing us and demanding that we allow her to stay with his consent. Even when the cops came to his house repeatedly saying that he needed to return her and that she wasn't his child, he kept on keeping her at his house, just interfering with us trying to get her back, etc. Well, now he's trying to claim that my numbers are wrong because I called him out for the fact that 97 of his children are dead, okay, because of the fact that God didn't bless him with children, but he had to make his children in a test tube. And through the process of IVF, statistically speaking, in order to have.
Okay. Is he saying that, like, because God didn't bless him with children and the children that were made in a test, whatever, are those ones not, like, from God? Like, the children he ended up having through IVF, are they not from God then?
I guess not. I
Are they are they
I
from the devil or something?
I don't know. Like again, like there's very little
That
logic
like
here.
that life specifically
Yeah.
is apparently not worth anything in his mind,
Yeah.
but then he's also like all of these ones died.
Yeah.
His train of thought doesn't make any sense.
Nope.
3 children through the process of IVF, you're going to end up killing approximately 97 statistically. And that's a best case scenario. Now, look, there's all kinds of propaganda out there of this supposedly like pro life IVF and IVF that's sensitive to those kinds.
Yeah, that's
It's
the
all
propaganda, not
lies and
this.
garbage. Okay. And I'm
No.
not just making this stuff up. In my sermon that I did a few months back, which I would highly
Aren't you
recommend that you
though?
listen to if you haven't already, my sermon called In Vitro Fertilization,
Oh, we needed to
I
look
was
that up.
referring to actual scientific papers, peer reviewed studies, and so forth. I'm going to put a
Ooh,
link
pause
in the
really quick.
description for this video to nih.gov.
So he mentioned peer reviewed studies. I need to find it. I've read it. There's this study that's out there. It's pretty popular, and it says that like 95% of scientists agree that life begins at conception.
Hmm.
I there's other studies that, I mean, he could be talking about something different, but that's a very popular one. But if you look deeper and you look at the sources that were cited and you look at the actual research that was done, they targeted a very specific group of biologists and different scientists when they were conducting that research. So it really is very biased,
Oh, okay.
which there are biased studies on both sides, 100%. A
Hmm.
lot of them are. But specifically, I mean, I think that it's a very comfortable conclusion saying that this is the kind of person who would take one of those very biased studies and hold it as fact. So I
Yeah.
just kind of wanted to call that out.
Yeah, like even when I was kind of like looking into it, it kind of seems like scientifically people do agree that life does start at conception. And I think it's just because technically it is like the start of a life, right? Like that has to happen to create a human, no
Right.
matter
It's a
what. Like that's
precursor
the
to life.
process. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I understand in that way, but to
Sure.
call it specifically like a human being or an
Right.
actual like
Right.
life, like I believe life comes from that, but
Right.
that
Of
doesn't
course.
mean that that is a life, right?
Right.
Because that would change a lot of things
Right.
if we consider that to be a life.
Hmm.
National Library of Medicine. It's really dense reading, and you're going to have to do a little math to figure it out. But everything that I said is true. Everything is backed up in this documentation. And I referenced this in the sermon. I was bringing receipts when I talked about this subject. But no, we're supposed to believe his little fairy tale version of this, where, he only killed 21, according to his version of the story. So basically, I'm just way off base, just really inflating things by claiming that, according to the science, statistically, I'm guessing that 97 died. He tried to say I was wrong because he only did 2 courses instead of 3. It's not based on how many courses of IVF you did. I was basing the numbers on successful live births versus fertilized embryos in the process. That's what the data is based upon. But let's just for a second believe Clint's numbers. Well, then that means that Clint has 21 dead children murdered through the wicked process of IVF. Now, at some point,
The
it kind of
wicked
starts mattering
process.
whether you've killed 21 of your kids or whether you've killed 97 of them. At some point, you are wicked and you're not pro life.
I cannot because I would rather my children never, ever, ever have like a life of abuse, like the way that he's been abusive to his children. I would rather them be terminated before they could even have that life. Do you know what I mean? Like, I would spare
Yeah.
them all of that.
Right.
Like, if I knew that's what their life would be.
Right.
There's no, like, and obviously, like, I don't spank my kids, hit my kids, whatever you want to call it. I do not abuse my children. Um, I
Well, you
respect
didn't
them.
let Arya have cake when she really wanted cake, so I don't know if I'd say that. No, I'm kidding. 100%.
I respect them as human beings, and I don't hit people when they don't listen to me or when I
Yeah.
don't get what I want or whatever. So why would I hit my kids
Right.
when I when they don't listen or whatever? So it's just such a stupid idea like that. Like you're
Like most of
wicked
his
for
ideas. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I feel like that's very much like a Christian idea, like ideology where it's like you are murdering these babies when a lot of times it's sparing them from a really bad life,
Yeah.
right? Like
Well, and especially when it
abusive
comes to
or
the concept of
financially.
IVF. Yeah. Like, especially when it comes to the concept of IVF, which is, I mean, like, that's a very different situation than abortion, right? These are people that want kids so badly that they're,
Right.
like, having to resort to this. So it's a very different situation most of the time. Um, it's not murdering children to
Yeah.
choose not to use embryos. Like,
He's acting like
that's,
he's acting like they're Anakin, you know what I mean? Like just like walking in and like just slaughtering all these
yeah,
kids.
yeah,
Like like okay,
yep.
can you like birth all these kids and then we'll just get rid of the ones that aren't as good? Like that's not what's happening.
No.
Um but yeah, I feel like a lot of times that's definitely the idea behind like not believing in abortion and stuff. So it is interesting. In my mind, I'm like, it's weird that you are okay with IVF if you are a Christian because of what you do believe, right? And the fact that like
This is a
they
very
don't
divisive thing for a lot
well,
of
and
Christians.
like I feel like they don't even seem to understand that like if you're saying if you do believe those things, if you do believe life starts at conception, then yes, IVF is also wrong and that shouldn't
Right,
be allowed, right?
right,
And I don't believe that, but obviously, if you believe a certain thing, you need to believe both things are true, right?
right.
And to me, it's like you don't understand that you're like taking away the ability for people to have kids when they can't like
Yeah,
on their own. And to
yeah,
me, I'm like, science is amazing. Like whether
yeah,
you believe God like created humans to like be smart and be able to like create these things to help
yeah. That's
other
one of my bullet
humans.
points. I wrote out a little outline for like my argument today, and that's one of my bullet
Yeah.
points. Yeah,
Like to me, it's like whether you believe that or if you just believe that like science is the way to go, which is like I believe obviously in science more than
right.
anything. And so to me, I'm like, it's amazing that you're able to do that. It's the same as anything, like any medication or anything, that's all science and it's all appreciated, I would say. Like
Yeah.
having pain medication, having like mental health medication, having cures to diseases and things like that, all of that is a privilege
Well,
and
look, infertility is a disease. Like, it's
yeah,
not something, most of the time, it's not something you can control. Like, it
right.
just sucks. And it happens to people for no reason. Like,
Hmm.
it's a disease. And there's no reason why you shouldn't be allowed to seek treatment for that.
Right.
It's a disease at
Yeah.
the end of the day.
And there's like yeah, there's different reasons behind it, right? Whether like your sperm or your eggs aren't healthy
Hmm.
as they are, like you just got unhealthy eggs for some reason or unhealthy sperm.
Yeah.
And then there's also people that do have like endo
Hmm.
and that causes issues with like being able to get pregnant. There's a lot of different like health issues that like can cause infertility. And to
Yeah.
me, it's like it's not fair that only certain people are allowed to have kids, right? Like it's everyone should be allowed to have the same access to those
Yeah.
things. And I would say even like with IVF, I'm like I feel like they need to make it more accessible to people that like aren't as rich as others, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that it should be easily accessible to all people
Yeah.
that are able to have kids. Okay, let's continue.
And, you know, anybody who's watching this video, if you think you're pro-life and you're for IVF, you're full of baloney because IVF ends up killing way more children than abortion does. Okay? Because
You heard it
there are
here.
many women who've had 21 abortions. But yet my brother Clint, even based on his
Wow.
coded version of the story, has killed 21
IVF is
children.
worse
He
than
just calls them little
abortion.
embryos and doesn't think they're alive. He doesn't think that they're even living human beings. You know, he flat out says that they're not, but then he turns around and says,
They're
"Oh,
not.
you know,
They're not like
They're living
not.
human beings.
they're not.
Is he gonna take the like little like jars home and he's just like has them? He adopts all of the little cells
The little test
and they're
tubes.
just sitting in the fridge. He like talks to them every day.
Oh my god.
They're not living human beings. They can't even fucking talk to you. They don't have a heartbeat. They don't have anything going for them, really. They have genes, but that's it. Oh
DNA does not a
god.
human being make.
They have the ability of becoming a human.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting. He very much sounds like he's saying that IVF is worse than abortion. Like,
I mean, if anything, it's equally like. I mean, it's equally.
well,
as
he's saying that it
awful.
causes it like murders more babies
That's true.
than
That's
abortion.
True.
So to me, that sounds like he's saying it's worse.
That's fair.
And what if I had a 21 abortions? Fuck you.
we tried our best to give them all a chance." Well, why, Clint?
Obviously, I have.
Little blobs of tissue. If they're just these little embryos that don't matter, then why would you even care about giving them? You might as well just flush them down the toilet then, based on your wicked pro-choice logic. Okay, so if you're actually pro-life and believe that life begins at conception, then murdering 21 children is just as bad as murdering 97. Also, he was trying to call me out like, you know, all of a sudden he's a murderer now. Well, what Clint knows and what everyone else in our family knows is that I called him out on this when I first found out about it almost 20 years ago. And I said it was murder then. I called him out as a murderer then. And in fact, we didn't even speak to each other for years over this issue.
Well, duh.
He already
Good.
knows that. He's
I wouldn't-
lying and acting like I just pulled this out or something.
I wouldn't speak to you if my Christian like family told me that I was a murderer for wanting to have children.
Yeah. Can we also like imagine how that kid must feel? Like
Right.
this is a
The
like
3 children he has.
yeah, for your uncle to sit here and say that your dad is a murderer for wanting you, like, bro, that's
Yeah,
heartbreaking.
it doesn't make any sense because to me all I'm hearing is that they're not worth as much as his children.
Yeah.
Right? Like the IVF children do not have the same worth as
Yeah.
quote unquote God-given children, which scientifically speaking, you only ovulate once a month. So there's not, there's a certain time you can have babies and you can believe whether it's from God or not, but
Yeah.
it's very scientific.
Go back and listen to my sermon on IVF from 15, 16 years ago. You know, it wasn't as advanced as my more modern sermon that I would more highly recommend. But the bottom line is, I've been against this issue since back when I was in Bible college before I even started a church. And I called him out on it. And like I said, we had a falling out for years. Now, why did I, after that, have a relationship with him? Because I was trying to be forgiving and trying to let people live things
Oh,
down.
that's so
And I thought,
condescending.
honestly, that there was some repentance on his part based on a lot of things that he had said.
That's so
You know,
condescending.
I thought that he had
Repented for having his kids?
Dude, the audacity of this man, like actually sitting here and saying that because somebody chose to start their family in a different way than you did out of necessity requires some sort of repentance. Like, that's so condescending. It's so holier than thou.
Right.
It's very narcissistic, it feels like. Like, I
Right.
don't want to just throw, therapy words around, but it really does sound narcissistic.
Well, like him with his fucking massive family
Yeah.
and then being like, you're not worthy enough to have kids because God didn't like specifically, give you children,
Yeah.
and that he should be repentant of wanting of wanting kids, of having the kids.
Yeah.
What is he repentant of? Like
There's
if
nothing
he's
for him to
repentant,
repent for.
yeah, like if he's repentant for like murdering these whatever zygotes or whatever they're called, zygotes. Is that what they're called? Zygotes?
Zygotes, pretty sure.
Like if he needs to repent for that, like then he also has to repent for like the children he has in his life.
Yep.
Like the whole entire process is wrong to him. So the children are wrong. Like to me being pro-life means like a life is a life no matter what, right? Like that every life should have the same
So, and I think
amount
that
of importance.
And I think that from his perspective, like, which I don't agree with, but he's saying that, yes, a life is a life no matter what. So for him, life begins when that egg is fertilized, when that embryo is created, right? So his perspective is that a life is a life. So you have now created these 21 or 97 or whatever the fuck lives and just thrown them away, which is like, again, that it's not true. It's just, I don't know.
And
It's
he's like, I like how he's like, just flush him down the toilet. Like you can't flush a whole human being down the toilet,
no,
FYI.
they're not the same thing.
Yeah. Even though we all had a terrifying thought of being flushed down the toilet when we were kids. Like,
I think it
Yeah.
was when I saw a goldfish being flushed down the toilet. I'm just like, oh shit, they could do it to me too.
that he had grown, that he had changed. I didn't know that he was this evil, conniving, scheming man-stealer that would basically
Wait,
flatter me to my face,
did you say man
while
stealer?
talking crap about me to my daughter, convincing her that she was this abuse
Wait,
victim,
what?
talking crap about me to my daughter,
Okay,
Go back
hold on,
further.
sorry.
her dealer that would basically a lot of things that he had said.
Okay.
You know, I thought that he had repented, that he had grown, that he had changed. I didn't know that he was this evil, conniving, scheming man-stealer that would basically
What's a
flatter me to my
man
face
stealer?
while talking crap about me to my daughter, convincing her that she was this abuse victim, going all the way back to March or something. And then I talked to him and interacted with him and seen him a bunch of times after that. He was flattering me. He was super nice to me, super kind to me, all while he's basically working to subvert my daughter behind my back. He's an evil person. And so, yeah, now I am drawing attention to what I already drew attention to in the past. The fact that God didn't bless him with children, so he made his children in a test tube, didn't care about the fact that he's murdering 21 children in the process, according to his numbers. Just whatever it takes for him to get what he wants, to get the child he wants. And now he thinks it's okay to steal my child. So at the end of the day, if you're watching this video and you're on Team Clint, then just do me a favor and don't ever call yourself pro-life. Because if you do, you're a liar.
I won't.
Because if you believe that life begins at conception, and if you believe that a fertilized embryo is actually a living human being, then you're pro-life and you're not going to be for IVF. But if you think IVF is fine, it's okay to just kill scores of children in order to produce test tube babies, well then you might as well be for the morning after pill. You might as well be for early abortions, abortions within, say, the first month and a half, or whatever. If
Well,
it really
yes,
is.
we which we
Check,
are.
check, check.
God bless you. Have a great day.
Okay, God
God
bless
bless you
you.
too. So the text says, okay, this is from Clint to Stephen. It says, "You sent the police to my house. I'm going to call you now and lay out what your options are. You need to be civil on this call and speak respectfully, or the call will end. Miriam doesn't feel safe going home. These are your options. Withdraw your complaint from the Greenville County Sheriff and allow her to stay here with us indefinitely with your consent, or Miriam is going to be forced to report you to CPS and tell them about the abuse." Sounds like reasonable options. From Stephen to Clint, go ahead, be my guest. From Clint to Stephen, if you try to retaliate against me further, I'll take the nuclear option and go on YouTube. And then from Stephen to Clint, there is no abuse, so I'm ready to be investigated. From Stephen to Clint, middle finger emoji.
I just love how he's like on his Facebook, like F you, like
Yeah, this is
jackass,
great.
all these things.
Like this, I've never seen a Baptist preacher of any kind with a middle finger emoji.
Right.
So Stephen says, oh, hold on. Let me get back to it. Stephen says, "Send her home on a plane tomorrow, or the sheriff will make you do it. Those are your options."
Mm.
Clint, "Nobody wants to go the CPS route. We would still prefer to resolve this civilly with you. She doesn't feel safe going home. All you have to do is withdraw your complaint and let her stay out here so she can live in peace. If you just let it be, she'll turn 18, move back to Arizona, and everything is fine. But by involving law enforcement and forcing her to go home, you're forcing her hand to go to CPS so she doesn't have to go home. I made a vow to support her, so that's what I'm going to do."
What an evil, horrible man.
That's the end of it.
Yeah. God.
So, yeah, I mean, clearly from those texts, I mean, I think that, obviously I don't know these people. So these are just assumptions that we're making based on context and conclusions that we're drawing to with the evidence that we've been provided. Clint does not sound like a bad person. I think that I'm very glad that this girl has somebody within her family that she trusts and that can take care of her and support her through this.
Right.
I absolutely think that she should go to CPS. Like, this man is completely unhinged. He is dangerous in the way that he speaks about this other person and about a lot of other people. I don't think that he will back down regardless of the consequences of not doing that. So, I mean, just save yourself some time and go to CPS.
Yeah, and I know since like based off of her interview with Dead Domain, I remember that she like was living with Clint, and then
Yeah.
because she was found, she like basically had to like go out on her own, like to live on her own, so nobody knew where she was.
Mm.
But honestly, it's like just really sad that she doesn't feel safe to be
Yeah.
at her home, and that she is being forced to like grow up a lot quicker than other kids would have to.
Yep.
And I hope she's doing okay. I hope that she has the support she needs, and
Yeah.
that she is able to like get help for her family as well. But obviously it's not her duty to like
None of this should be
do
on
that.
her.
Yeah, right. Um Also, like, I don't know if you heard of the like 8 passengers case.
Mm-mm.
It's a Mormon family. They were like vloggers on YouTube, and they were very abusive to their children, and a lot of people reported them.
Hmm.
And they ended up like getting like CPS ended up getting called a lot of times, but like nothing ever happened. One of the daughters ended up like finally being old enough to move out, and she like would call CPS a lot to try to get check-ins because she wanted to get her kid, like her siblings, out of there and out of
Yeah.
being abused, and nothing would come of it. Um, it came down to the point where like the kids would literally be left, like the sister knew this, that like the kids would be left alone while the parents would leave for weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. And the kids would be like roaming around outside by themselves and everything too. Like,
Jeez.
and yeah, and nothing ever happened. So then eventually it got to the point where it did become an extreme abusive situation where the youngest son he had to like escape from being tortured and run to a different house, and he was like uh what is it? Starving,
Mm.
and had a bunch of like wounds and stuff from being chained up basically. And
Wow.
he went to the next door neighbors when they weren't home to get help. And when he ended up when they finally ended up like going to trial and everything, the little boy like believed it was his fault that
Oh,
everything was
honey.
happening because they basically made it seem like he was like like a sexual abuser or something.
Wow.
It's like it was a crazy, crazy case, and just super devastating, and like shows how, I don't know, like some people can be very like unhinged and like put all their anchor towards their children, and like I don't know, there's certain people that just shouldn't have kids, and like the whole
Yeah.
idea of like having as many kids as you possibly can is super toxic because you can only give so much of
Yeah.
yourself. And like there comes a point where you need to make a decision of like it's either my kids or like my mental health, or like if I have another kid, I'm going to lose my shit more and I'm just not going to be a healthy mom or a nice mom, right?
Yeah.
Like there comes a point where you have to say no to
Yeah.
having another child
Yep.
for your own sake and for your kids' sake. Because
Yeah.
there's no way you can give yourself to 5 children or more, right? Like
No.
there's no way you
How are
can
you
give
going to
yourself
have
to.
that, like, very, like, there really is so much time in a day. Like,
Right.
how are you going to give them that one-on-one connection that they need as children, especially as they grow up and become teenagers that like need that constant support and love. They need you to be checking in on them. They need you to
Yeah.
be involved in their lives. Like, how are you going to do that? Like, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't do that as
Yeah.
one
It's
parent. And IFB households typically are one parent households. The dad goes and works and provides financially, and the mom does everything else. Like,
yeah, everything. And she also pops out babies as soon as she's like
yep,
viable too.
yeah,
It's I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen families that have been like that and like
oh yeah,
how exhausted
yeah.
those moms
Oh, I
seem.
see it all the
Like
time. Well,
God,
used to, but yeah,
of them just like literally like the second they can get pregnant, they're just pregnant again, and it's
yeah,
oh God, I feel so bad for them. And I'm so thankful that I don't have a husband that believes those things, because
yeah,
I definitely would probably not be alive if I was popping out a
yeah,
million children,
yeah,
right? Like I'm thankful for all of the scientific things, because for me, I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't be alive if it wasn't medications to like stabilize me during postpartum situations.
yeah,
And that's something that a lot of, especially IFB and religious groups, don't believe in or look into, is like the whole postpartum like depression and anxiety and stuff like that, like you really do need time to like nourish your body and to allow time before you have another kid. And
Yeah.
I think when it's a very American thing to like not ever take a break or take care of yourself, but like in all other cultures, there's like a period of like, I think they call it a specific thing too. Some cultures call like the postpartum a specific word, like a specific term,
Hmm.
where it's like where you are like replenishing your body, like giving it specific foods because like you've been through this huge journey
Yeah.
of literally creating life, right? And women should be honored for that and taken care of
Yeah.
for continuing the human race.
Like
You know, like
100%. So
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the concept of life beginning at conception, because I think that that's where this whole IVF kind of hate comes from. Is the idea that IVF creates several fertilized embryos that are then implanted. So those fertilized embryos, most pro-life people would believe that that is a life, which is why they would
right,
be against IVF. Um, so I personally, my belief is that um, life begins when a fetus can survive outside of the womb, which is usually at minimum 20 weeks. That's my personal belief, and you don't have to agree with that. That's 100% okay, but that's what I believe. I also believe that it's biblical. I don't think that the Bible necessarily says life begins at 20 weeks.
hmm
But I've been doing a lot of research on this. So before I start reading the verses that I highlighted in my Bible, what is your belief about abortion and when does life begin?
so for me I would say the same thing where I it's not even that, I don't know, I don't have like a specific belief of like when you should and shouldn't get an abortion, because I believe you should have the choice
Sure.
over your body and your children, like in this, like you know what's best for yourself, you know what's
Sure.
best for your family and everything. And I'm never ever going to judge someone for
Right.
making the hardest decisions of their lives, right?
I
Like to
agree.
me, if you have to terminate a child 20 weeks on or whatever, that is a devastation, because
Yeah.
you wouldn't be getting to 20 weeks if you didn't want that
Yeah.
baby, right? And so my biggest thing is like 20 weeks is one of the biggest scans you get for your baby. It's the
Yeah.
biggest health scan. And so it's the anatomy scan.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we're able to find out if the baby is growing properly, if it has all its organs,
Mm-hmm.
if it has a hole in its heart, whatever it is, any type of issue
Yeah.
that either, decides if this baby is able to live outside of you or not. On top of that, like that's a huge thing, right? Like
Of
I
course.
remember for me, when I went, it was very scary. Like you're very excited to see the baby, and a lot of times you the gender during the scan too.
Mm-hmm.
But and you get to see the baby and everything, and it's really cool. But at the same time, you could find out really devastating news.
Yeah.
And all you hope for is that the baby's healthy. That's
Yeah.
literally all you hope for. It's like, I just hope that there's nothing wrong with my baby and that they're okay and everything. But if you are in that situation where you do get bad news, like, I will never judge someone
Ever.
for
No. And
having
I
to
agree with you
go
100%.
through having to decide. Like,
Yeah.
nobody wants to decide. Like,
Yeah.
I would say it's the same as like having to take someone off of life support. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a decision that should never have to happen, right? Like you should never have to choose those things for anybody.
Yeah.
But you have to.
Yep.
There's times where you have to make these really tough decisions. And it's no place for me to judge you
I
for
agree.
having to go through these things and for choosing certain things that make sense for you and your family. Also, financially, if like if you can't see yourself being able to support a child with disabilities or whatever, that's a huge thing. And just in general, when it comes to abortion, finances and stuff, that's a huge thing because a lot of times when abortions are women that already have children.
Yeah.
So they have to keep in mind like supporting the kids that they already have. And I think you don't understand until you have kids that the ones that are outside of your body, living, breathing, crying, needing you, are a million times more important than a little fetus you've never met, have no true connections to, know nothing about, like that can't survive outside of you. It's completely different, right?
Yeah.
Like it's completely different. And people kind of make it seem like it's like me being like, I'm just gonna kill my 3-year-old son. Like
So that
it's
I can,
somehow
yeah.
like it's
It's
somehow
not equal.
comparable. Yeah, it's somehow comparable and it's not. It's
No,
not
it's
at
not.
all. And something else too, Josie, is that I don't believe babies can survive outside of the womb until like 24. And
I think I read that the earliest like reasonable survival is 20 weeks. I mean, obviously the
yeah.
more the better, right? The
So
more time they have to cook the better. But
well, so
I also want to make it very clear that I don't think 20 weeks is just the end all be all cutoff for a legal abortion.
right.
I
So
yeah.
for me it's like so okay, so um a lot of babies can't survive until 24 weeks and the reason is there is no there's no place for them in a hospital when they're that young. There's
Yeah.
nothing they can do. Idaho, which believe whatever you want. I'm not conservative, so I don't love it here, but the hospital that I live by has a I think they have the 24-week NICU.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something you have to think about is like not every single hospital has
Right.
NICUs that will accept a baby that
Right.
is younger than a certain like
Gestational
week.
age. Yeah.
Right. So like if you are going into birth with a 20-week, they don't even have the option to support
Right.
that life.
Right.
So that's something to think about. Like
For sure. There's so many
so
factors. And I think at the end of the day, it is not and never should have been, never should be a government issue. This should
mhm,
not be something that is legislated. This is a moral question, it's a religious question, it's a
right.
personal question. This is something that nobody's answer is going to be exactly the same for their situation. It's
And
just
that's
not.
okay.
And
Yeah,
that's
and
100% okay. And I think that Christians and a lot of people that are pro life are Christians, I think that at least I know growing up IFB, we were very uncomfortable with anything that was gray. Like if it's black, if it's white, we understand it, and there we go. We're gonna spout off the facts because that's what we know.
mhm,
But this is a very gray issue. There are so many different factors to consider, so many different things to think about, so many things that could go right, so many things that could go wrong, so many reasons. Should
mhm,
never have been legislated because it is not a matter that is black and white.
right. And
So,
yeah, there's
good.
very much there's so many different things that can change the situation. Every
Yeah.
situation's different. And yeah, I just always thought it was interesting because I was like I honestly didn't know that they couldn't have like they couldn't save a baby until a certain week because
Mm.
I thought like if you go in they'll do whatever they can for the baby,
Yeah.
right? But they can't. And not every NICU has
Yeah.
that support to be able to have like a younger fetus.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. It's something that I feel like people should look into and stuff because, yeah, if the baby can't survive outside of you, then they aren't a life, like they aren't their own entity, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
I
They're
agree.
they're connected to you for a reason because they need you to be
Right.
like for their life to be sustained.
Yeah.
With and if without you, their life cannot be sustained, then they aren't their own life to begin with. And as much as we would want them to be, it's just not possible for them to live outside of the womb without you
Yeah.
until a certain time, right? Um, but yeah, that's honestly my thought is just that, especially after everything I've been through, pregnancy, postpartum, all of the different things I've gone through because of being pregnant
Yeah.
and having kids, I've just become so much like empathetic towards people's and like compassionate towards people's situations, and that like
Yeah.
I have no right to judge them because
Yeah.
who
And
am
I
I to
really
say I
like,
wouldn't do the same thing in that situation?
right. And like, I think that that's such a struggle for pro life people and for, a lot of people in the IFB, Christians, whatever. Like, the concept of not judging people is pretty
Yeah.
foreign to them. They're very judgmental people. I was also a
I mean,
very judgmental person
isn't
at one
God
point.
isn't God supposed to be the only one who can judge you?
Yeah, right? I had a fight about that with Daniel's brother actually once, Andrew.
Oh,
We had a
really?
fight about that, yeah, because we were talking about Obama being elected, and it was after bus ministry because Andrew was on my bus that I helped run, and he was spouting off some like, oh, I fucking hate Obama bullshit, and I was like, well, we'll let God judge. That was my response to that, and he's like,
Right.
no, actually we should judge, and proceeded to rattle off some bullshit Bible verses and how he was like thinking about them and just like really saying that Christians can and should judge and we're given the right to do that. And that explains so much about who he is as a person.
Yeah,
But it
I
explains a
just
lot
feel
about the
like
IFB.
I feel like a lot of times abortion is like the topic of abortion and stuff and being pro-life is very much like uh which I usually call it pro-birth because
It is. It's
let's
pro
be
birth. It's
honest,
not necessarily pro life.
they're not pro children or anything or
No.
pro a happy healthy family. They don't give a fuck about the child after it's born.
Yeah.
Um but what was I saying?
I don't
Because I
remember.
went on a rant. I went on
We
a rant
rant.
of pro-birth.
Yes.
Huh?
Okay, so I want to look at abortion and the concept of life beginning at conception from a biblical perspective. Um, I've done some research. So I have 5 different passages that talk about, that are commonly used by Christians, by the IFB, to support this claim that life begins at conception. So I'm just going to kind of read them right in a row. I am reading from the Bible. It is a KJV Bible. I have highlighted verses in my Bible for the first time in a very long time. So I have done my research and I have some very strong opinions. So, okay, the first passage I am going to start with is Psalm 139, 13 through 16. And I'm not used to reading in this language, so sorry if I suck. For thou
Do you need
hast.
an accent?
Do I
Do you
need a
need like
what?
an accent?
For thou hast possessed my reins. No. For thou hast possessed my reins, thou hast covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. My substance was not hid from thee when I was made in secret, and curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Thine eyes did see my substance, yet being unperfect, and in thy book all my members were written, which in continuance were fashioned, when as yet there was none of them. So that's the first one. I'm just going to kind of read these right in a row, and then I'm going to give some opinions here in a second. So the next one is Job 31:15. And again, these are all verses that are commonly used to justify life beginning at conception. So Job 31:14 and 15.
For thou hast possessed
what
my reins,
then
thou hast
shall I
covered
do
me
when
in my
God
mother's
riseth
womb?
up, and when he
I will
visiteth,
praise
what
thee,
shall I
for I
answer
am
him?
fearfully and wonderfully
Did
made.
not he that
Marvelous
made me
are
in
thy
the womb
works,
make
and that my
him,
soul
and
knoweth
did
right
not
well.
one fashion
My
us
substance
in
was
the
not
womb?
hid from thee, when I was
So,
made in
lofty
secret,
15,
and curiously
what
wrought in the
then
lowest
shall
parts
I
of the
do
earth.
when God riseth
Thine
up,
eyes
and when he
did
visiteth,
see my
what shall I
substance,
answer him?
yet being unperfect.
Did not he that
And in
made
thy
me in the
book
womb
all
make him,
my
and
members
did
were
not
written,
one
which in
fashion us
continuance
in
were
the
fashioned,
womb? When as yet there
So,
was none.
lot
15, lots of womb words, which is super fun. Okay, so the next verse that I want to call out, there are just two more passages left. Isaiah 49:1 and 5.
For thou hast possessed my reins, thou hast covered me in my mother's womb.
The Lord hath
I will
called
praise
me
thee,
from
for
the
I am
womb,
fearfully
from
and
the
wonderfully
bowels of my
made.
mother hath
Marvelous
he
are
made
thy
mention of my
works,
name.
and that my soul
And
knoweth
now saith
right
the
well.
Lord that
My
formed me
substance was
from the
not
womb
hid
to
from
be
thee,
his
when I was
servant,
made
to
in
bring
secret,
Jacob
and
against
curiously
him.
wrought in the
Though
lowest parts of
Israel
the earth.
be not
Thine
gathered,
eyes
yet
did
shall I be
see my
glorious in the eyes of
substance,
the Lord,
yet
and
being
God shall be my
unperfect.
strength. And in thy
Listen, O
book
isles,
all
unto me,
my
and
members
hearken,
were
people
written,
from
which in
afar.
continuance
The
were
Lord
fashioned,
hath
when
called
as
me
yet there
from
was
the
none of
womb,
them.
from the
And then the last one I want to read is the most common, the one that I heard growing up all the time about why life begins at conception. It's Jeremiah 1:5. It says, Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee, and before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. So,
Yeah, that's the most commonly. Yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
So all of these verses very clearly talk about God knowing you in the gestational phase of your life, essentially.
Right.
Every verse except for this one in Jeremiah has no time frame. It has no, at this X amount of time, I knew you, anything like this. This one in Jeremiah, before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. Historically, Christians, a lot of Christians, I read an article that quoted in the, like, before the 1970s, Christians use that to support predestination, not life beginning at conception. So it can't mean two different things. So, and this more supports the idea of predestination. It supports that God knows our path rather than necessarily your soul entering your body during the gestational phase. So the last verse that I'm going to read here, before I stop reading my Bible for quite a while. So this is the one that is, I think, very telling for me. It's Ecclesiastes 11:5. It says, As thou knowest not what is the way of the Spirit, nor how the bones do grow in the womb of her that is with child, even so thou knowest not the works of God who maketh all. You can't know, is essentially what this verse is saying. At the end of the day, there is no biblical support for life beginning at any point of the gestational phase. When I say any point, I mean like at a specific point in the gestational phase. As a Christian, I believe that your soul enters your body at some point during the gestational phase. I don't think it's at X number of weeks. I think that this verse supports that. You can't know. It is an individual belief. It is an individual faith. And the issue is that IFB, Catholics, Protestants, Jehovah's Witness, Mormons, you name a religion, they all think that everybody should believe the same thing. And that's not biblical either. Clearly, the Bible tells us that we cannot know. There's a lot of the things that the Bible tells us that we cannot know. We can't know the second coming of Christ. There's a lot of things we can't know. And for the Bible to be very clear, in my opinion, very clear about that, that's the end of the discussion. Like, there's no reason that I should sit here and say that I know better than somebody else when God says you cannot know. So if somebody wants to be very anti-choice, if somebody wants to be very pro-birth, that's fine. Do that for yourself. You have no jurisdiction over anybody else's body. And the Bible says that we cannot know at what time the spirit enters the bones.
I feel like also, yeah, you have to keep in mind, like, coming from a non-religious belief, that all of this comes from, well, it seems to stem from religious groups or biblical views or whatever.
Yeah.
And you can't hold everyone to biblical views or beliefs. Like, you just can't. And other people have different religions. There's all of these different things that we expect about other people's lives and decisions that they have to make. And it's not up to you what your neighbor does. You need to worry about yourself, and that's it. And if you feel like abortion is wrong, then don't have an abortion. And, you know, that's kind of the extent of your power. You can't.
And it should be the extent of your power. Unfortunately, we live in a country and a world that gives that power over to government, which is not where that power belongs. That is an individual freedom. That should be an individual power. It's an individual decision. You can't legislate morality. Abortion is not a legal issue. It's a moral one. Whatever moral decision is right for you and your family and your body and your child, that's the decision that you should make. Not what an old white man sitting in a chair getting paid way too much says that you should do.
Right. And I think that it's obvious that we can't really agree on when life begins.
No.
And with everything that we can't agree on, like, you can't say that something's true, like, factually, if no one can agree on one thing, right? So, like, that's the same thing as, like, the afterlife. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Whether you want to believe a fantasy of heaven or hell or whatever the fuck, nobody actually knows. Yeah, like, there's no, like, factual evidence of, like, when life actually begins. I would say that some people, that it's, like, a lot of the times, rather than, like, conception, I would say it's more when the heart starts beating. There's also, like, that theory of, like, the heartbeat law and stuff like that. And that can be really dangerous, because if the heart is still beating and the mother needs the fetus to be removed for her own health, they can't remove it until that heartbeat is no longer beating, right? So there's a lot of different things and a lot of technicalities and stuff, and I think that it's wrong to make doctors fearful of helping you. Because of the law, like, that they feel that they're going to get in trouble if they help you. Like, that's messed up. No matter what, every single person deserves a chance at life, at living, at healthcare. We all deserve the same rights of getting help from a doctor so that we don't die.
And like, an embryo is not a person. Like, like people, like living people deserve that. And an embryo, a fertilized egg, a clump of cells is not a person.
Yeah. And also, like, I feel like a lot of those Bible verses very much stem from, like, the belief of, like, God, like, believing in God, first of all, believing that God knows you. And I feel like that's always been, like, a beautiful thing, right? Like, God knew me, and he, like, knew that I was gonna, like...
He loved me before I existed.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful concept.
Right. But I also feel like it does have a lot to do with, like, the idea of, like, God knows who you are and who you are. Right? Like, to me, like, that's the whole, like, idea of him being omniscient and whatever, right? Like, that he knew that you were going to, and that he knew that all of the things. He knows all
Yeah.
the things, right? So I would say that refers more to that than being like,
True.
oh, this is when life begins. It
Yeah.
refers more to
Yeah.
he
So
just
if
knows who you are. And you can only believe that if you believe in God.
right. And that
So,
is the thing that I really like about this verse in Ecclesiastes. I think it is the only place, or at least it's the only place that I found, like researching for this episode, where it specifically talks about a spirit or a soul that exists in the womb. And it specifically states that the only place in the Bible where it talks about this specifically states that you can't know. So why isn't that enough for you? Like, why isn't it enough in the Bible if you're a Christian? Why isn't it enough for you that it says it right there? It should be enough for you.
so
It should
something
at
I was,
least be enough for you to stop being mean to other people for believing something different than you.
yeah, I think that something I was going to say earlier that I forgot is that one of the biggest things with like being pro birth or whatever uh is the savior complex that I feel like
Oh,
people have.
yeah. Yeah, that's a big
Like
one.
where it's like if it's the same idea of like saving everyone you possibly can,
Yeah.
and it like makes it, I don't know, like makes them want to save all these fetuses too, right? Because it's like all these extra lives and putting yourself like, I don't know, like making yourself be the savior for these
Yeah.
fetuses when it's
I think
like,
that it's like,
I don't know, it's such a weird thing.
it's just that concept of like hurting somebody else to make yourself feel good,
Right,
because by preaching this and not having any empathy or understanding for the very complex reasons that exist behind abortions, um like it's very easy to look at it shallowly and say, "Oh, I'm saving unborn children. Ha ha ha, look at me." And then not have any understanding of the damage that you're doing to living, breathing women and men that want these children and are having to go through like spontaneous abortions or abortions in general, like men that want their
and
children to
also the
suffer that
children
loss.
themselves,
Exactly. Like
like,
you, there's so many other perspectives that exist in the case of one single abortion than you preaching at somebody that they're murdering a child when that's not the case.
right. And to me it's like then the same people are condemning those that get pregnant before
Before a piece of
marriage,
paper. Yeah.
like condemning that child like like you don't believe he's a gift from God, right? Like you don't believe it's a blessing from God when you
Yeah.
do believe that.
Yeah.
Then there's also Pastor Boyle and all of the pastors like him that don't protect children
No.
at
No,
all.
if I am 100% certain, because I have seen it happen in other IFB churches, that if I had gotten pregnant after years of abuse, I would have been forced to co-parent with Daniel at the very least, if not
Right,
us forced to get married.
right. Yeah, I make it make sense. It doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't.
And
And I
for
think Devaney
you
had a really good
to,
point on her episode. Like, it is so much easier to have an abortion. It is so much easier to just do it and not have to tell anybody in the church and not have to face that judgment. Like, it's just so much easier. So this same environment that's saying, "Oh, you're murdering babies when you have an abortion," is also making it a very unsafe place to say, "Hey, I have an issue and I need guidance and I need to be able to have people that I can rely on to help through a pregnancy." Like it's another place where the church is just contradicting itself. Yet another one.
yeah. I mean, I feel like no matter what situation, um, it kind of depends. Like having a kid in comparison to having an abortion being easier. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
maybe in her instance it was, but for someone that like maybe that was their only chance of having a kid
Yeah.
and they had to get an abortion because of whatever reason.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
there's a lot of
even in
different
that
things.
situation in the church, it's easier not to say anything about it. Like, it's
Yeah.
easier to just keep it a secret. And
Well, because the church doesn't support you. The church doesn't support, like, they don't support people like that need help. They really don't. They make it seem like they're saviors and they care about all of these people's lives, that they care about people, that they care about them going to hell, but they won't even care about them in this life.
yeah.
Like, they won't care about them being financially like unstable, right? Like
Yeah.
their health, whatever it is. Like, I don't, I think that's the flaw with Christianity and religion is like
One of many.
you make yourself seem like the good guy and the savior, like because you're going to save them in another life. But within this life, what are you doing to help
Yeah.
them? What are you doing to save them? You're not doing anything. All you're thinking about is your crowns in heaven
Yeah.
and like how it's going to reflect on you in the
Yeah.
end. It has nothing to do with saving them. It has to do
No.
with what you will get in heaven, how big your mansion's going to be, whatever the hell it is.
It's the same vibe as somebody who goes out to help homeless people or unhoused people by giving them stuff with a camera in their face.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's just, I just feel like it's so hypocritical because,
It is.
like, if you truly care about children, if you truly care about babies, then make a difference in healthcare, make a difference in
The
mental
financial state of
health.
America.
Yes, make it easier for
Like,
people to
all
have
of that
children.
energy that you're putting into judging other people, that you're putting into shaming people for their really difficult decisions in their life, all of that energy that you're putting into making people's lives actively worse. Can we not refocus that? Like,
Right.
there's better places to spend that. There just
Right.
is.
Like you need to be proactive in making the world a better place. To me, in my mind, if you're going off of like the way that Jesus was and the way that he helped the poor and like the
Yeah.
sick and things like that, if you're going off of that, then we should be pushing for things that will allow people care, allow people access to whatever they need to survive in this lifetime.
Yeah.
And like providing support for mothers and family, all of that matters. Like, and it, I don't know, like I've posted a lot of like stuff about why I believe in abortion, like, you know, being pro choice, um, post having children.
Yeah.
And I don't think I was until post, right? Till
Interesting.
I went through everything
Yeah.
and understood the depth of what it was like being pregnant and postpartum. Really, I really understood why people make the decisions they do, and
Yeah.
it just gave me a lot of perspective. And I started posting a lot of stuff, and I think I lost friends because of it.
Oh yeah. I did
But
when I started posting stuff too.
yeah, but there were some friends that did reach out and they were like kind and trying to understand my perspective
Yeah.
and like the fact that there's more than one reason to have an abortion.
Yeah.
There's so many different things that could affect why that would happen, like the outcome. And not everyone is privileged the way that certain people are, right?
Yeah.
And I had one person basically call me a murderer.
Love that.
And that like I posted like if you're gonna force us to have kids that we can't support, then you need to help us. And they're like, so you just want handouts? And you just want us to just murder all of them to like
No.
like
Homies, we
get
are talking about
like quote unquote get
adoption
rid.
reform. We are talking about the financial crisis that is plaguing America. The middle class is basically disappearing. Like, I want to
Dude,
be able...
the maternal like death
Yeah.
rate is
Yeah.
on the rise.
Healthcare is a huge factor in that. Like, there's so many different
Mental
reasons.
health.
Like, nobody I know wants a handout. I want to be able to go to work and make enough money to support my family. And I want to be able to have balance in my life. I don't believe that I should be given something for nothing. I have a good work ethic. I work really hard at my job. And I believe that is a responsibility that I hold, is to do that. I want to be able to make enough money to be okay. Like,
Right.
and that's not unreasonable. That's not a handout. That's a major economical reform that needs to happen. But
yeah, I would say that it's like,
that's another
especially
issue.
with like the millennials and stuff, it's like we get like such hate for complaining about everything being expensive when it's like it's because it is. It's because we are working.
Because we couldn't buy a house when we were 3 years old, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, we're working like the same or more than our parents did, and then it's like we can't support the life that we need, like that we have. Like we can't survive with we're not getting paid enough for and like for the expenses and everything, and it's like like
that's a whole separate issue.
I just feel like it's like the financial aspect with the abortion and like being able to raise a child is huge. It's like,
oh, absolutely it is.
Definitely one of the main reasons. And I would just urge people to try to have compassion and understanding judging something you have no idea about.
Yeah.
Stop judging those that have made decisions that aren't aligned with your point of view, and do what's right for yourself, and stop judging other people for something you have no right. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. That's my opinion with that.
I would agree with you. So, in conclusion today, Steven Anderson is unhinged. IVF is not murder. Life does not necessarily begin at conception. And don't be mean to other people. I think that's about it for today. Thanks for listening to all of our opinions. And if you have a different opinion than us, we would love to hear it. We are definitely open to respectful and honest conversations, different points of view. We are also not biblical scholars, which I don't think that you should have to be to understand the Bible. So this is my opinion based on scripture.
Yeah, this is our personal opinion, and if you don't agree, that's fine, but we're all allowed to have our own opinions here.
Yep.
And we all should be able to be each other.
Yeah.
With different opinions. So, thank you for watching. Hopefully you kind of enjoyed the unhinged video that we watched earlier, and hopefully this sparks conversation within your family, within yourself, just
this is
thinking about
an excellent conversation to have around the Christmas table. 100%.
Yeah.
Do it.
But yeah, please like and subscribe and do all the things. We are thinking about starting a what is it? Patreon.
Oh yeah, I need to look at that.
Yes, we are thinking of starting a Patreon. So if you all would be interested in supporting our channel in that way, that would be awesome. So look forward to that. And we'll see you guys in the next one.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Share your story.
If you have been affected by religious trauma or abuse, we want to hear your story.
Even if you're not ready to share publicly, we would be happy to listen and support you on your journey, free of judgment or pressure.
Please email us at cultconfessionskjv@gmail.com to get started.
We believe you.